In the world of Damian Cavallo, silence is expensive, but loyalty is priceless. There was only one rule in his empire. The red phone, the secure line to his private estate, was never to be used unless the house was burning down or someone was dead. But when that phone rang in the middle of a billion-dollar negotiation, it wasn't a death threat from a rival. It was his terrified maid, Beatrice, whispering 7 words that stopped the most dangerous man in New York cold. "Please come home. She'll destroy her." Damian thought he was racing to save his fragile wife from a monster. He had no idea that when he opened that door, the monster would be the only one telling the truth. The conference room on the top floor of the Obsidian Tower in Manhattan was soundproof, bulletproof, and cold enough to preserve meat. That was exactly how Damian Cavallo liked it. At 34, Damian wasn't just a boss. He was the architect of the modern underworld. He didn't trade in drugs on street corners. He traded in shipping lanes, union contracts, and political silence. He sat at the head of a mahogany table long enough to land a plane on. Opposite him sat the heads of the Russo family, sweating despite the air conditioning. Damian hadn't blinked in 4 minutes. "You're asking for 30% of the Jersey port," Damian said, his voice a low, smooth baritone that sounded like expensive gravel. He adjusted the cuff of his bespoke suit. "I'm offering you 10, and I'm offering you the continued privilege of breathing while you walk through my city." Albert Russo, a man twice Damian's age, swallowed hard. "Damian, be reasonable. The commission exists because I allow it to." Damian cut him off. He didn't raise his voice. He never had to. The atmosphere was pulled so tight it vibrated. This was the kill shot, the moment Damian lived for. He reached for the platinum fountain pen to sign the contract that would effectively neuter his greatest rival. Then a sound cut through the room. Brrring. Brrring. It wasn't the polite chime of a smartphone. It was the harsh, mechanical trill of an old-fashioned landline. Every man in the room froze. They looked at the side table, where a single, cherry-red rotary phone sat. It was an anomaly in the high-tech office. A relic. Damian's hand hovered over the contract. His eyes, usually the color of frozen espresso, widened by a fraction of a millimeter. That phone connected to only one place, Blackwood Manor, his secluded estate in upstate New York, and only 2 people had access to it: his head of security, who would only call if they were under siege, and Beatrice, the 60-year-old maid who had practically raised him. Damian didn't apologize to the Russos. He didn't excuse himself. He lunged for the phone, snatching the receiver with a grip that could crush bone. "Talk!" he barked. "Sir, Mr. Damian." The voice was jagged, broken by hyperventilation. It was Beatrice. "Beatrice, is it an attack? Are the guards down?" Damian's free hand clenched into a fist on the table. The Russo brothers watched, sensing a weakness, a crack in the armor. "No. No guns," Beatrice whispered, her voice trembling with a terror Damian had never heard before. It's your mother, Lucrezia. She's here." Damian felt the blood drain from his face. "My mother is in Sicily. She's exiled." "She's here," Beatrice sobbed. "She found her. She found Sienna. She's in the library with her now. Mr. Damian, please. You have to come home now. She's whispering to her. She's going to destroy her." Damian didn't ask what that meant. He knew Lucrezia Cavallo. His mother didn't use knives. She used words that acted like scalpels, dissecting a person's psyche until there was nothing left but trauma. And Sienna. Sienna was glassed, beautiful, rare, and already cracked. "I'm coming," Damian said. Get inside the room. Don't let her speak another word." "I can't," Beatrice cried. She locked the doors. "Sienna is screaming, sir. She's screaming your name." Damien slammed the phone down so hard, the plastic casing cracked. He turned to the Russos. The predator was gone. A desperate animal had taken his place. "Get out," Damien snarled. "But the contract," Albert started. "I said get out," Damien roared, flipping the heavy mahogany table. Papers flew like confetti. Meeting adjourned. He was running before the papers hit the floor. The drive from Manhattan to Cold Spring usually took an hour and 20 minutes. Damien made it in 45. He drove his matte black Aston Martin like he was trying to outrun death itself. Rain had started to fall, slicking the highway, but he didn't tap the brakes. His knuckles were white on the leather steering wheel. Sienna. He replayed the last 2 years in his mind. He had found her in a hospital in Florence, a Jane Doe with no memory of her past, the victim of a boating accident that had nearly drowned her. She was an artist without a name, a soul without a history. Damien, a man who owned everything but loved nothing, had been captivated by her blank slate. He had created a life for them at Blackwood Manor. To Sienna, he wasn't a Mafia don. He was Damien, a wealthy venture capitalist who invested in green energy. He kept her hidden away, not just for her safety, but to protect the lie. He had built a sanctuary for her, a gilded cage filled with paints, canvases, and gardens. He told himself he was protecting her. But deep down, Damien knew the truth. He was hiding her because if she ever found out who he really was, and who she might be, she would leave him. And his mother, Lucrezia, was the keeper of all the dark truths Damien had buried. Lucrezia, who believed love was a weakness, and that Damien's obsession with this nobody was destroying the Cavallo Empire. "She'll destroy her," Beatrice's words echoed in the engine's roar. Lucrezia knew Sienna had suffered severe amnesia and psychological trauma. She was fragile. A single push could shatter her mind permanently. Damien drifted around a hairpin turn, the tires screeching in protest as the iron gates of Blackwood Manor came into view. The guards at the gate were missing. That was the first sign that this wasn't a social visit. It was a coup. He smashed through the wooden arm of the gate, shattering the windshield, and skidded to a halt on the gravel driveway. The manor loomed ahead, a Gothic beast of stone and ivy. It was dark, save for a single light blazing from the ground-floor library. Damien didn't wait for his backup. He drew the 9mm pistol from his shoulder holster, though he prayed he wouldn't have to use it on his own blood. He kicked the front door open. "Sienna!" he screamed, his voice echoing through the vaulted foyer. Silence. The house smelled of ozone and something else, something acrid, burning. "Beatrice!" he called out. He found the maid in the hallway leading to the library. She was slumped against the wall, weeping, clutching a rosary. She wasn't injured, but she looked like she had seen a ghost. "She's inside," Beatrice whimpered, pointing to the double oak doors of the library. "It's too late, Mr. Damien. She knows. She knows everything." Damien felt a cold pit open in his stomach. The lie was over. Now, he just had to survive the fallout. He walked to the library doors. He expected to hear sobbing. He expected to hear his mother's cold, mocking laughter. Instead, he heard humming. It was a low, melodic tune. A lullaby. An Italian lullaby that Damien hadn't heard since he was a child. He gripped the door handle, took a breath, and threw the doors open. "Mother, step away from her." The command died in his throat. Damien stopped, his gun lowered to his side, his fingers going numb. The scene before him was not what he had driven 90 miles an hour to stop. It wasn't his mother towering over a cowering Sienna. The library was in shambles. Books were torn from the shelves. The antique globe was smashed. And in the center of the room, the fireplace roared with a fire that was too high, too hot. Lucrezia Cavallo, the iron matriarch of the Sicilian underworld, was sitting in a high-back leather chair. She wasn't attacking anyone. She was tied to the chair with silk drapery cords. Her face was bruised, her lip split, and her eyes, usually so full of malice, were wide with genuine fear. And standing over her, holding a fire poker glowing red-hot at the tip, was Sienna, his fragile, amnesiac wife, who cried when she stepped on a spider. She was wearing a white silk nightgown stained with soot. Her hair, usually perfectly styled, was wild and tangled. She turned her head slowly to look at Damien. Her eyes weren't the soft, confused doe eyes he had come home to for 2 years. They were sharp, clear, deadly. She didn't look crazy. She looked awake. Sienna smiled, and it was a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She gestured to the terrified Lucrezia with the hot poker. "Hello, Dom," Sienna said, her voice dropping the soft American accent she had used since the accident, replaced by a crisp, aristocratic Italian cadence. "Your mother and I were just catching up. She was telling me the most fascinating story about how we met." She stepped closer to Damien, the heat from the poker radiating between them. "She says you didn't find me in a hospital," Sienna whispered. "She says you took me from a burning car, a car you ran off the road." Damien couldn't breathe. The shock wasn't that his mother had come to destroy Sienna. It was that, in trying to break her, Lucrezia had cracked the shell of amnesia and released something far more dangerous. "Sienna, listen to me," Damien started, stepping forward. "No, darling," she interrupted, pointing the poker at his chest. "Sienna is the name you gave me. It's the name of a pet." She tilted her head, her eyes flashing with a terrifying recognition. "My name is Alessandra Rossi, daughter of the man you killed this morning in negotiations." The silence that followed was louder than a gunshot. Damien realized then that Beatrice had been wrong. Lucrezia hadn't destroyed her. She had rebooted her. And the woman standing in front of him wasn't his wife. She was the heir to his greatest enemy, and she just woke up in the bedroom of her kidnapper. Damien stood frozen, his mind racing to calculate the odds of survival, not just for him, but for her. "Alessandra," he whispered, testing the name. It felt like ash in his mouth. "Don't say it," she snapped, the poker wavering slightly. The firelight danced in her eyes, illuminating the tears she refused to let fall. "Don't you dare say my name with the same mouth that lied to me every night for 730 days. "I saved you," Damien said, his voice hard, trying to regain control of the room. He holstered his gun, a gesture of surrender, or perhaps arrogance. "That accident, the car crash, it wasn't me, Sienna. It was a hit. A hit ordered by your own uncle to seize control of the Rossi family. I was the one who pulled you out." "Liar!" Lucrezia screeched from the chair. She struggled against the silk cords, her impeccable Chanel suit ruined. "Don't listen to him. He wanted you as a trophy, a pet to keep in a cage to humiliate your father." Sienna, Alessandra, swung the poker toward Lucrezia, stopping inches from the older woman's face. The heat singed Lucrezia's eyebrows. The matriarch gasped, shrinking back. "You shut up," Alessandra hissed. "You came here to taunt a cripple, Lucrezia. You came here to whisper poison into the ear of a broken woman. You thought you could make me kill myself to spare your son the burden?" She laughed, a dark, jagged sound. "But you didn't know who I was, did you? You just thought I was some stray." Alessandra turned back to Damien. She showed me the photos, Dom. She brought a photo album. Who brings a photo album to a murder? She kicked a leather-bound book across the floor toward Damien. He looked down. It lay open to a picture of a gala in Rome 3 years ago. In the photo, a younger Damien stood in a tuxedo, glaring across the room at a woman in a red dress. The woman was Alessandra Rossi. She looked fierce, proud, and dangerous. "I remember the dress," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I remember the music, and I remember hating you." "We were enemies," Damien admitted, stepping over the book. "Our families have been at war since the 1920s. But that night, I didn't hate you." "Stop," she commanded. "I remember the crash. I remember the headlights. I remember nothing after that. Just you, waking up to you." She dropped the poker. It clattered loudly on the hardwood floor. She looked at her hands, trembling now. "I loved you," she said, the words full of agony. "I loved the man who brought me tea in the mornings. I loved the man who sat in the garden and read poetry badly just to make me laugh. Was he real? Or was he just a mask the monster wore?" Damien closed the distance between them. He ignored his mother's protests. He reached out, grabbing Alessandra's shoulders. She flinched, but she didn't pull away. "The man in the garden was real," Damien said intensely, gripping her tight. "The peace we had here, that was real. I wanted out, Alessandra. I wanted out of the life. When I found you in that wreck, when I saw you didn't remember the hate, the blood, the vendettas, I saw a chance for both of us to be clean. You stole my life," she sobbed, hitting his chest with her fists. "You stole my family." "Your family is dead," Damien shouted, shaking her once. "Your uncle killed your father. Your brothers are in prison. If I had sent you back, you would be dead in a week. I kept you to keep you alive." "Or did you keep me as insurance?" she challenged, her eyes searching his. "I kept you because I couldn't breathe without you," he confessed. It was the most honest thing he had ever said. Suddenly, the front window of the library shattered. Crash. A canister hissed across the floor, spinning and spewing white smoke. Tear gas. Damien reacted on instinct. He tackled Alessandra, shielding her body with his own as the room filled with choking smoke. "Clear the room! Secure the target!" a voice shouted from the foyer. It wasn't his security. It was a tactical team. "Rossi loyalists!" Damien coughed, pulling his shirt over his nose. "No," Alessandra coughed, her eyes stinging. "My uncle doesn't use tactical teams. He uses thugs." Damien squinted through the smoke. He saw red laser sights cutting through the haze. These were professionals, mercenaries. "Beatrice!" Damien yelled. But there was no answer. He dragged Alessandra behind the heavy oak desk just as automatic gunfire shredded the bookshelves where they had been standing seconds ago. "Who are they?" Alessandra screamed, clutching his lapel. "I don't know," Damien growled, checking the magazine of his pistol. "But they aren't here for me." He looked at her. They're here to finish what the car accident didn't. Lucrezia, still tied to the chair in the center of the room, began to scream as the laser sights settled on her chest. "Dom, do something!" Alessandra cried. Damien had a split-second choice. Save his mother, the woman who tried to ruin him, or save the woman who might kill him if they survived the night. He looked at Alessandra. "Do you trust me?" "No," she said. "Good. Then trust the gun." He shoved a spare snub-nose revolver he kept taped under the desk into her hands. "Shoot anything that doesn't look like me." Damien vaulted over the desk, firing into the smoke, diving toward his mother. This wasn't just a domestic dispute anymore. War had come to Blackwood Manor, and for the first time, Damien Cavallo wasn't sure if he was the most dangerous thing in the house. The air in the library was a toxic soup of tear gas and burning paper. Damien slid across the polished floor, the friction burning his knees, and sliced the silk cords binding his mother with a switchblade he pulled from his boot. "Get up!" he roared, hauling Lucrezia to her feet. "They're going to kill us!" Lucrezia shrieked, clutching her pearls, her face streaked with soot and mascara. "You fool! You brought this upon us! Move!" Damien shoved her toward the heavy oak desk where Alessandra was crouching, a mercenary in full tactical gear, black fatigues, night vision goggles, and no insignia, kicked through the shattered window frame. He raised a suppressed HK-416 rifle, sweeping the room. He didn't see Damien in the shadows of the smoke, but he saw the movement of the white dress behind the desk. He leveled the rifle at Alessandra. Damien was too far away. He raised his gun, but he knew the angle was bad. He was going to miss. Bang! The shot didn't come from Damien. It came from behind the desk. A deafening crack from the snub-nose revolver Damien had given Alessandra. The mercenary's head snapped back. He crumpled to the floor, dead before he hit the wood. Damien stared. It wasn't a lucky panic shot. It was a center-mass hit, a professional kill. Alessandra rose from behind the desk, the revolver held steady in a two-handed grip. Her eyes were streaming from the tear gas, but her expression was stone cold. The trembling, artistic girl who painted watercolors of the Hudson River was gone. In her place stood the daughter of the Rossi crime family, a woman trained from birth to survive a siege. "The back exit," Alessandra commanded, her voice cutting through the ringing in Damien's ears. "The kitchen corridor leads to the servants' quarters. It's the blind spot for the security cameras. If they hacked the system, they won't see us there." Damien felt a strange, twisted surge of pride mixed with horror. She remembered. She remembered the tactics. "Go!" Damien barked. He grabbed his mother's arm, dragging her as they sprinted toward the library doors. Alessandra took point, moving with a grace that was lethal. They burst into the hallway. The air was clearer here, but the silence was heavy. "Beatrice!" Damien called out again, scanning the corridor. He saw a shape on the floor near the kitchen entrance, a small, frail heap of black uniform and white apron. Damien skidded to a halt, dropping to his knees beside her. "Beatrice," he whispered, turning her over. The maid's eyes were glassy, staring at the ceiling. A single bullet hole marred the center of her chest. Her hand was still clutching the portable phone she had used to warn him. Damien felt his heart stop. Beatrice had been more of a mother to him than the woman shivering behind him ever was. She had bandaged his knees when he fell off his bike and bandaged his gunshot wounds when he fell into the life. He felt a hand on his shoulder. He looked up. Alessandra was looking down at Beatrice, her face pale. She didn't look at the body with disgust, but with a profound, aching sorrow. "She tried to save me," Alessandra whispered. When she started talking, Beatrice tried to stop her. She told me to run." Damien closed Beatrice's eyes. A cold rage settled over him, heavier and darker than anything he had ever felt. This wasn't business anymore. It was annihilation. "We have to move, Damien," Alessandra said, her voice tight. "There are more coming." "Leave the help," Lucrezia hissed, pulling at Damien's suit jacket. "She was just a servant. We are the bloodline." Damien stood up slowly. He turned to his mother. For a second, Lucrezia looked at her son and saw death. "If you speak again," Damien said, his voice devoid of humanity, "I will leave you here with them." Lucrezia clamped her mouth shut. "To the garage," Damien ordered. "We take the armored SUV." They moved through the kitchen, the sound of heavy boots thumping on the floorboards above them. The team was sweeping the second floor. They had minutes, maybe seconds. Damien punched the code into the keypad, hidden behind the pantry shelving. A panel slid open, revealing a concrete staircase leading down to the underground garage. As the door hissed shut behind them, sealing them in the damp quiet of the tunnel, Alessandra spun around, aiming the revolver at Damien's chest. "Now!" she breathed, her chest heaving. "Tell me the truth, before we get in that car. Who sent them?" "I don't know," Damien said, raising his hands slowly. "The Russos are sloppy. These men are military, precision shooters, breaching charges. This is high end." "It's not the Russos," Alessandra said, her eyes narrowing. "I saw the patch on the dead man's vest before we ran. A silver scorpion." Damien froze. "That's impossible." "What?" Lucrezia demanded. "Who is it?" Damien looked at Alessandra, and for the first time, they shared a look of mutual, terrified understanding. "The Scorpion Group," Damien said. "They're not mercenaries. They're cleaners." "Cleaners for who?" Lucrezia asked. "For the government," Alessandra finished. "Or the people who own the government." "Why would they want us dead?" Damien asked, his mind racing. "Not us, Dom," Alessandra said, a bitter smile touching her lips. "Me. I'm the loose end. I'm the heiress to the Rossi fortune, a fortune the state seized when my father died. If I'm alive, I can claim it back. And if you're dead," Damien realized, billions of dollars in assets disappear into black budget accounts. "You didn't just kidnap a wife, Damien," Alessandra whispered, lowering the gun slightly. "You stole the most expensive ghost in America." The underground garage was a fortress of concrete and LED lights. Damien's car collection sat gleaming in the artificial light. A Ferrari, a vintage Jaguar, and the Beast, a Range Rover Sentinel, fully armored, capable of withstanding a blast from a grenade. "Get in," Damien ordered, throwing the driver's side door open. Lucrezia scrambled into the back seat, sobbing quietly now, her bravado stripped away by the reality of the Scorpion Group. Alessandra hesitated at the passenger door. She looked at the car, then back at the tunnel door they had just come through. "I should leave," she said. "If I go, they'll follow me. You and your mother will be safe." Damien walked around the hood of the car. He stopped inches from her. He could smell the smoke in her hair, the lavender perfume she always wore, a scent he had bought for her. "You think you can outrun the Scorpion Group in the woods in a silk nightgown?" Damien asked. "I'd rather die in the woods than get in a car with my kidnapper," she spat, though her voice lacked conviction. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her shaking. "I am not your kidnapper right now," Damien said, his voice low and urgent. He reached out, taking her hand. Her skin was ice cold. "Right now, I am the only thing standing between you and a shallow grave. You hate me? Fine. Hate me. Use that hate to stay alive. But get in the damn car." Alessandra looked at his hand, then up at his eyes. She saw the desperation there. Not for his life, but for hers. It confused her. It terrified her. She ripped her hand away, but she opened the door and climbed in. Damien exhaled, jumped into the driver's seat, and hit the ignition. The V8 engine roared to life. "Buckle up," he said. He hit the remote for the garage door. The heavy steel shutter began to rise slowly. Too slowly. Through the gap at the bottom, Damien saw boots. "Hold on!" He slammed the car into gear and floored the gas. The 3-ton SUV surged forward, smashing into the rising steel door. The metal buckled and tore with a screech that sounded like a dying dragon. The Range Rover burst out of the garage and onto the rain-slicked driveway. Gunfire erupted instantly. Bullets sparked off the armored glass and bodywork. Ping! Ping! Thud! "Get down!" Damien shouted. Lucrezia screamed, curling into a ball on the floorboard. Alessandra didn't hide. She watched the side mirror. "Flanking left!" she yelled. "Black SUV coming out of the trees!" Damien saw it, a heavily modified Jeep coming straight for their side. He wrenched the wheel to the right, drifting the Range Rover across the gravel. The Jeep clipped their bumper, spinning out, but recovered quickly. They hit the main road. Damien pushed the engine to the red line. 100 miles per hour. 10. "They're gaining!" Alessandra shouted, looking back. "2 cars, maybe 3. "I know." Damien gritted his teeth. "I can't outrun them on the straight. This thing is built like a tank, not a race car." "Then stop running," Alessandra said. She reached into the glove compartment. She knew exactly where Damien kept his backup piece. She pulled out a modified Glock 19. "What are you doing?" Damien yelled. Alessandra rolled down the window just a crack, enough to fit the muzzle through. The wind roared into the cabin, bringing the rain with it. "Drive steady," she ordered. She leaned out, her hair whipping across her face. She aimed at the lead pursuer's tires. Pop, pop, pop! The windshield of the pursuing Jeep shattered, but the driver kept coming. "They have bulletproof glass too," she shouted, pulling back in. "The bridge," Damien said, his eyes fixing on the road ahead. "The Storm King Bridge. It's under construction. It's narrow." So only one car fits at a time. Damien slammed the brakes, drifting the heavy SUV into a sharp left turn toward the old bridge. The tires smoked, struggling for grip on the wet asphalt. The pursuing cars followed. They hit the bridge deck, a metal grid that hummed under the tires. Below the river was a black, churning abyss. "Damien, there's a blockade!" Alessandra screamed. At the far end of the bridge, 2 black vans were parked sideways, blocking the exit. Men with rifles were taking positions behind them. They were trapped. Pursuers behind. A blockade ahead. "Mother of God," Lucrezia prayed from the floor. "We are dead. We are dead." Damien looked at Alessandra. The speedometer read 80. The blockade was rushing towards them. "Alessandra," he said, his voice strangely calm. She looked at him. For a moment, the war outside vanished. "I didn't crash that car to kill you," he said. "I crashed it to stop them from taking you that night. I made a mistake. I should have told you. But I was selfish. I wanted to keep the peace." "Why are you telling me this now?" she cried, tears finally spilling over. "Because," Damien said, tightening his grip on the wheel, "I'm about to do something stupid." "Damien, no!" "Hold on tight." Damien didn't hit the brakes. He didn't aim for the gap between the vans. He yanked the steering wheel hard to the right. The Range Rover slammed into the temporary construction railing on the side of the bridge. The metal groaned and snapped. The car went airborne. For a second, they were weightless, suspended in the dark, rainy sky above the Black River. Lucrezia's scream was cut short as gravity took hold. The SUV nosedived into the icy water below with a bone-shattering impact. Water rushed over the windshield immediately. The world turned black and cold. The silence underwater was absolute, a terrifying contrast to the chaotic gunfire just seconds before. The Range Rover sank like a stone, the heavy armor plating dragging it down into the murky depths of the Hudson River. Damien was conscious, but barely. The airbag had deployed, slamming his head back against the headrest. A warm trickle of blood ran down his temple, mixing with the icy water that was rapidly filling the cabin around his ankles. The impact had warped the doorframe. The seals were compromised. "Mother?" Damien choked out, fumbling for his seatbelt release. "Help me. I can't swim. I can't swim." Lucrezia was thrashing in the back seat, the water already at her waist. Her panic was sucking the oxygen out of the small air pocket remaining. Damien turned to the passenger seat. It was empty. His heart hammered against his ribs. Alessandra. Had she been thrown out? Was she already gone? He unclicked his belt and twisted his body, fighting the disorientation. "Hold on, I'm coming," he yelled to his mother. He grabbed Lucrezia's arm, hauling her toward the front. The water was rising fast, chest high now, freezing, numbing. Damien tried the door handle, locked, jammed by the pressure of the water and the warped metal. He kicked the window. The bulletproof glass, designed to stop high-caliber rounds, mocked him. It wouldn't break. They were sealed in a coffin. "We're going to die here," Lucrezia wailed, the water lapping at her chin. "You killed us, Damien. You killed your own mother." Damien ignored her. He was feeling around the floorboard for the gun, for a tool, for anything. His fingers brushed against something metallic, the tire iron Alessandra must have grabbed. But he couldn't get leverage. The water was over his head now. He took a final, deep breath, pressing his face against the roof of the car, the last inch of air disappearing. Darkness took them. Damien's lungs burned. He kicked the door again, futilely. His vision began to spot with grey. He felt his mother's frantic gripping on his jacket slow down. She was drowning. Then, a thud. Something hit the windshield from the outside. Damien looked up through the murky water. A shape was hovering over the hood of the sunken car. A woman. Her white nightgown floated around her like a ghostly aura in the silt-filled water. Alessandra. She hadn't been thrown out. She had escaped through her window before the car fully submerged. She could have swum to the surface. She could have left them to rot. Instead, she was back. She had the heavy tow hook from the front bumper in her hand, a solid block of steel. She slammed it against the already spider-webbed windshield, right where the bullets had weakened the glass earlier. Thump, thump. Damien realized what she was doing. He braced his legs against the dashboard and pushed with everything he had left. Crack. The windshield imploded. The rush of water was violent, sucking Alessandra into the cabin for a moment before the pressure equalized. Damien grabbed her hand. It was small, cold, and strong. He grabbed his mother by the collar of her ruined Chanel suit. He kicked off the seat, propelling them out through the shattered windshield and into the open river. The swim to the surface was an agonizing eternity. Damien's chest felt like it was being crushed by a vice. He dragged Lucrezia, who was dead weight, while Alessandra swam beside them, kicking hard. They broke the surface, gasping, the night air tearing at their throats. The rain was still pouring, masking their escape. They were drifting downstream, away from the bridge, away from the burning wreckage of the blockade. They washed up on a muddy bank a mile downriver, near the skeletal remains of an old logging pier. Damien dragged his mother onto the wet grass. She was coughing up water, retching, but alive. He collapsed beside her, staring up at the stormy sky. Every muscle in his body shook with hypothermia and shock. He heard footsteps in the mud. He tensed, reaching for a gun that was no longer there. Alessandra stood over him. She was shivering violently, her dress clinging to her skin, stained with mud and river slime. Her hair was plastered to her face. She looked like a creature born of the storm. "Why?" Damien rasped, his voice a broken whisper. "You could have run." Alessandra hugged herself, her teeth chattering. She looked down at him with an expression that was impossible to read. It wasn't love, but it wasn't hate anymore either. It was something heavier. "You saved me from the fire," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain. "Now, the debt is paid. We are even, Damien." She turned to look at the dark forest line. "But don't think this means I forgive you." Damien sat up, wiping the blood from his eye. "We aren't safe yet. The scorpions won't stop looking until they find bodies." "Then let's give them bodies," Alessandra said, a cold determination hardening her features. The Hudson River did not give up its dead easily. The water was a freezing, churning slurry of silt and oil that felt less like liquid and more like a suffocating shroud. When Damien finally dragged his body onto the riverbank, half a mile downstream from the twisted wreckage of the Storm King Bridge, he felt less like a man and more like a corpse that had simply refused to stop moving. He collapsed face first into the mud, his lungs heaving to expel the river water. The rain was still falling, a relentless, icy sheet that washed the blood from the gash on his temple. Beside him, a coughing fit racked the small, soaked frame of his mother, Lucrezia. She was curled in a fetal position, shivering so violently her teeth clacked together audibly over the roar of the storm. But Damien didn't look at his mother. He rolled onto his back, his vision grey and tunneling, searching for the third survivor. Alessandra was standing 10 feet away. She hadn't collapsed. She was swaying, fighting the pull of exhaustion and hypothermia. But she was upright. The white silk nightgown she had worn in the library, a garment meant for sleep and comfort, was now a ruined grey rag clinging to her skin. Her hair was matted with river weeds. She looked like a spectre rising from a grave. Damien tried to stand, but his legs failed him. He grunted, forcing himself up to his knees. "Alessandra," he rasped, his voice raw from the smoke and water. She turned her head slowly. Her eyes, once the warm, confused hazel of sienna, were now the hard, flinty obsidian of a Rossi. She looked at him, not with gratitude for pulling her to shore, but with a calculation that chilled him more than the river had. "The cabin," she said, her voice hollow but commanding. She pointed a trembling finger toward the dark tree line. "My father took me hunting here when I was a child. There's a squatter's shack past the ridge. If we stay here, the thermal drones will find us within the hour." Damien stared at her. Even half drowned and freezing, she was thinking tactically. The amnesia wasn't just gone. The survival instincts of a crime boss's daughter had fully rebooted. "Move," Damien ordered his mother, grabbing Lucrezia by the arm and hauling her up. She wailed, a pathetic, broken sound, but he dragged her forward. The cabin was little more than a rot of cedar and tin, abandoned decades ago by hunters or hermits. The door hung on one hinge, and the floor was covered in dry leaves and animal droppings, but the cast-iron stove in the center was still intact. Damien worked in a fugue state. He barricaded the door with a heavy, rotting table. He smashed a wooden chair to splinters and used dried moss from the corners to spark a fire in the stove. As the flames finally caught, casting a flickering orange glow across the dank room, the adrenaline began to fade, replaced by the crushing weight of reality. They were alive, but they were hunted. Lucrezia sat in the corner, wrapped in a moth-eaten rug Damien had shaken out. She was rocking back and forth, muttering prayers to saints who had long ago abandoned the Cavallo family. Damien stripped off his soaked suit jacket and dress shirt, tossing them near the fire to dry. His torso was a map of old violence, bullet scars, knife wounds, now overlaid with fresh, purpling bruises from the crash. He sat heavily on the floor, dismantling the Glock 19 Alessandra had saved. He dried each spring and pin with obsessive care. It was the only leverage they had left against the world. Alessandra stood by the dirty window, watching the rain lessen into a grey pre-dawn drizzle. She hadn't spoken since Ent the riverbank. She had found an old, oversized flannel shirt on a rusty nail, likely left by a squatter years ago, and pulled it over her ruined dress. It swallowed her small frame, making her look deceptively fragile. "Why are you cleaning the gun, Damien?" Alessandra asked, not turning around. "We have one magazine, 7 rounds, The Scorpion Group has an army. 7 rounds is enough to take a car, Damien said, snapping the slide back onto the frame. We get a car, we get to the safe house in Jersey, then we disappear. Disappear? Alessandra turned then, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. Like you made me disappear? Another cage, Damien? Another lie? I'm trying to keep you alive, Damien snapped, his patience fraying. Do you think this is a game? The people chasing us are Black Ops cleaners. They don't leave loose ends. I know exactly who they are, Alessandra said, stepping into the firelight. The warmth brought a flush back to her pale cheeks, making her look dangerously alive. I saw the patch, the Silver Scorpion. They are the private enforcement arm of Senator William Prescott. Damien froze. The name hung in the air like toxic smoke. Senator Prescott was the darling of New York politics, the tough-on-crime candidate who had promised to clean up the streets. Prescott? Damien narrowed his eyes. He's on the payroll. I've funneled millions into his super PAC through shell companies. Why would he burn his own asset? Because he's not just on your payroll, Alessandra said, her voice dropping to a hush. He was on my father's payroll first. My father, Roberto Rossi, kept a ledger, a black book of every bribe, every rigged election, every covered-up overdose involving Prescott's family. When my father died, that ledger vanished. She took a step closer to Damien. Prescott thinks I know where it is. That's why he wanted the Rossis wiped out. That's why the car accident happened 3 years ago. It wasn't just a hit. It was a search and destroy mission. Damien looked at the floor, the pieces falling into place. So when I saved you, when I hid you away, you accidentally hid the only witness Prescott fears, she finished. As long as Sienna the amnesiac artist existed, Prescott was safe. But the moment my memory returned, the moment I became Alessandra Rossi again, I became a liability that had to be erased. But how did they know? Damien stood up, the gun heavy in his hand. How did they know tonight? No one knew you were remembering. No one knew the amnesia was cracking. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the crackle of the burning wood. From the corner, a small, trembling voice spoke up. I told them. Damien and Alessandra turned in unison. Lucrezia stopped rocking. She looked up, her mascara smeared down her face like war paint, her eyes gleaming with terrifying, desperate defiance. What did you say? Damien whispered, feeling the blood drain from his face. I called Senator Prescott, Lucrezia said, her voice gaining strength, shedding the veneer of the frightened old woman. Yesterday morning, while you were playing house with this stray. You called him? Damien took a step toward her. Mother, we are in this cabin, soaking wet and hunted, because of you. I did it for the family, Lucrezia shrieked, scrambling to her feet. You were weak, Damien. You were letting this girl rot your brain. You refused to expand into the heroin trade because she didn't like drugs. You refused to kill the Russo brothers because she made you soft. You were destroying the Cavallo empire for a woman who wasn't even real. Alessandra watched her, her face unreadable. So you traded my life for political favor. I traded a ghost for security, Lucrezia spat at her. I told Prescott that the Rossi girl was alive. I told him her memory was returning. I told him if he eliminated her, I would ensure the Cavallo family fully supported his re-election and handed over the ports. You invited a hit squad into my home, Damien roared, his voice shaking the flimsy walls of the cabin. You let them kill Beatrice. You almost killed me. I told them to spare you, Lucrezia insisted, clutching her pearls. It was supposed to be a surgical strike. They were supposed to kill her and leave. I didn't know they would use gas. I didn't know they would burn the house. They are cleaners, Mother, Damien yelled. They don't leave witnesses. If they killed her, they would have had to kill me to keep me quiet. You signed my death warrant because you were jealous." "I am the matriarch," Lucrezia screamed, her sanity fraying at the edges. "I did what had to be done, and I would do it again to save my son from the daughter of our enemy." Damien stared at the woman who had raised him. He saw the madness in her eyes, the absolute, narcissistic inability to accept fault. She hadn't done this for him. She had done it for control. She would rather see him dead than see him independent of her influence. Slowly, Damien turned the Glock 19 in his hand. He gripped it by the barrel. He walked over to Alessandra and held the handle out to her. "She's yours," Damien said. His voice was dead. Cold. Lucrezia gasped. "Damien, what are you doing?" Alessandra looked at the weapon. Then she looked at Damien. "You're giving me the gun?" "She betrayed us both," Damien said, not looking at his mother. "By the laws of our world, both the Rossi and Cavallo codes, the punishment for betrayal is death. You are the aggrieved party. It is your right." "Damien, no!" Lucrezia fell to her knees, clawing at his trousers. "I am your mother. I gave you life. You cannot let this Rossi witch kill me." Damien kicked his leg free, stepping back. He stood like a statue, watching Alessandra. He was testing her. Or perhaps he was testing himself. Was he finally ready to cut the cord that had strangled him his whole life? Alessandra took the gun. It was heavy, warm from Damien's hand. She checked the chamber, a habit from a life she had tried to forget. She walked toward Lucrezia. The older woman scrambled backward until she hit the rough log wall. "Please," Lucrezia sobbed, holding her hands up. "Please, I have money. I have accounts in the Caymans. I can give you millions. Just let me go." Alessandra aimed the gun at Lucrezia's forehead. Her finger rested on the trigger. Her eyes were void of pity. "You took 3 years of my life," Alessandra whispered. "You killed the only person in that house who showed me kindness. You tried to burn me alive." I'm sorry," Lucrezia wailed. Alessandra tightened her grip. The hammer was cocked. All it would take was 3 pounds of pressure. Justice, revenge, closure. Damien didn't flinch. He watched the woman he loved hold the power of life and death over the woman who made him. Then Alessandra exhaled, a long, shuddering breath. She lowered the gun. She thumbed the safety back on and turned away, leaving Lucrezia sobbing in the dirt. "No," Alessandra said. "Why?" Damien asked. "She deserves it." "If I kill her," Alessandra said, walking back to the fire, "then I am just another gangster. I am just another killer in a cycle that never ends. That is what you are, Damien. That is what she is. But that is not who I want to be." She looked back at Lucrezia with pure disgust. Besides, death is too easy. She wants to die a martyr. She wants to be the tragic mother. Alessandra turned to Lucrezia. "You want to survive? Then survive, but you do it with nothing. No money, no influence, no son." She looked at Damien. "Kick her out." Damien nodded. It was the right decision, a cruel, perfect decision. "Get out," Damien said. "Damien, you can't be serious. It's freezing. I have nowhere to go," Lucrezia pleaded. "You have the road," Damien said, his voice hard as iron. "Walk to the highway. Hitchhike. Beg. I don't care. But if I ever see your face again, if you ever call my phone, if you ever say my name, I won't be as merciful as she was. Damien, go." The roar sent Lucrezia scrambling for the door. She stumbled out into the grey, wet morning, weeping, stripping herself of dignity with every step. She disappeared into the mist, a queen reduced to a beggar. The silence in the cabin returned, but it was lighter now. The poison was gone. Damien walked to the window, watching his mother vanish. He felt a strange lightness in his chest. Grief, yes, but also freedom. "You passed," Alessandra said quietly. Damien turned. "Passed what?" "The test," she said, tucking the gun into the waistband of her flannel shirt. "If you had tried to save her, if you had hesitated, I would have shot you both." Damien looked at her and realized she wasn't lying. "I believe you." "So," she said, warming her hands over the stove. "Sienna is dead. The artist is gone. Lucrezia is gone. It's just us and Senator Prescott. We can't go back to the way it was," Damien said, walking toward her. "I can't lock you in a gilded cage anymore, and you can't pretend you don't know who I am." "No," Alessandra agreed. She looked up at him. The romantic tension was there, undeniable, but it was charged with something sharper now. Danger. "I don't want a protector, Damien. I had a protector for 2 years, and he lied to me every day." "What do you want?" Damien asked. "I want my inheritance," she said, her eyes blazing. "I want the Rossi territory back. I want Senator Prescott's head on a platter, and I want to rebuild New York." "That's a tall order," Damien said, a slow smile spreading across his face. "You'll need an army." "I don't need an army," Alessandra said, stepping into his personal space. She reached out, her hand resting on his chest, right over his heart. "I have the king of the underworld. That should be enough." "Is that a proposal?" Damien asked. "It's a business deal," she corrected. 50-50, split on everything. Profits, territory, risks. "And us?" Damien asked, covering her hand with his. "What are we? Business partners?" Alessandra looked at his lips, then up to his eyes. "We are 2 people who survived the fire. Let's burn the rest of the world down and see what's left standing." "Deal," Damien whispered. He leaned in, and this time, when he kissed her, it wasn't gentle. It tasted of smoke, rain, and blood. It wasn't the kiss of a fairy tale romance. It was the seal on a declaration of war. Alessandra pulled back, breathless, her eyes shining. She grabbed the rusted iron poker from the side of the stove, the same weapon she had wielded in the library. She handed it to Damien, then picked up the Glock for herself. "Come on, partner," she said, kicking the door open to the morning light. "Let's go home." And that is the story of how a maid's terrified phone call toppled an empire and birthed a new one. Damien thought he was saving a damsel, but he ended up partnering with a queen. It's a brutal reminder that in the underworld, the most dangerous person in the room isn't always the one holding the gun. It's the one with the most to lose. I have to ask you guys, if you were Alessandra, could you have forgiven Damien? Or would you have left him to drown in that river? It's a choice between justice and survival, and I want to know your verdict in the comments below. If you enjoyed this twisty Mafia thriller, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.